Okay, when choosing to run a drug as an infusion, piggyback into a main line, there's a couple of things that you're going to need to consider. So for this example, I'm going to say that this is phenylephrine here. But the number one thing that you're going to need to do when hooking this up is you're going to have to come down here to the main line here, and you're going to hook this piggyback infusion up to the closest port to the patient as possible for two reasons. Number one, this drug is going to have a much faster onset because it's closer to the patient. And number two is you're going to have a lot less phenylephrine that can build up in this main line. And so let me demonstrate that by hooking this up to the furthest port away from the patient as possible. So I'm hooking it up to the furthest port away from the patient as possible here. And there's a couple of problems with this. Number one, it's going to take forever to get to the patient. But what's even more important is now you risk having this entire main line concentrated with phenylephrine. That could be disastrous because if you were to open up the main line to bolus a different drug like Zofran, for example, this patient would get a large dose of phenylephrine, and that's not something that you want. A word of caution here, because you do not want to bolus medications through your piggyback line. But you can get confused because you've got a lure lock port from the main line oftentimes laying next to a lure lock port from the piggyback line. So what I'm going to suggest is that whenever you connect a piggyback line, to always tape the ports off, because it makes it impossible for you to accidentally inject drug into the piggyback line. If you were to inject something like a muscle relaxant into the piggyback line, and that piggyback line wasn't running, well, later on in the PACU or something, maybe this piggyback line would get turned on and you could paralyze an awake patient. So, just to sum it up, whenever running a piggyback line, connect it to the closest port to the patient as possible and tape off all of the piggyback lure lock ports, and you'll be very safe when running these infusions.